Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about all of the books that I read in August. So let's get into some stats. I read 9 books in August and I had 1 DNF. And out of those 9 books that I read, I feel like I had a pretty good range of genres this past month. So I read 2 fantasy, 2 sci-fi, 2 historical fiction, 1 literary fiction, 1 thriller, and 1 romance. So I feel like that is a pretty good range of genres. Without further ado, let's just get into it, starting with the book that I DNF'd, which was Heartless by Elsie Silver. I know some people probably are going to be mad at me for this. I am planning to continue the series, so just because I DNF'd this one doesn't mean that I am not going to continue the series. But however, this one was just a little too spicy for me. I didn't even get to any of the actual full-on spicy scenes, but I just felt like it was a very physical heavy relationship between our MMC and our FMC. And I felt like specifically all of the chapters from the MMC's perspective were very much heavily talking about him thinking about the things that he wanted to do to her or with her. It mentions how his bulge started straining on his pants, like that kind of thing, and it just was too much for me. So I decided to DNF this one, but I will continue the series for now, at least. And I'm not going to get rid of this book if I continue the series and complete the series. I'm going to keep this one just so that the series is complete, even though I DNF'd it. And I probably never will pick it up again, because spice just isn't my thing. The first full book that I read was Renegades by Marissa Meyer. I really enjoyed this book, actually. I gave it 4 stars. I wasn't sure going into it if I was gonna like it or not because it's more sci-fi than fantasy, and I'm just not big into sci-fi. I just haven't branched into that subgenre of fantasy yet. But I was pleasantly surprised, and I do really want to continue the series. I listened to it and I really liked the audiobook for it, and I will be continuing the series. I just haven't continued it yet. But this one follows 2 different groups of people. There are like superheroes and then there are villains, and our FMC in this book is actually on the villain side, which normally main characters in books like this are on the hero side. So that was kind of cool to see it from a different perspective than what you would normally think would be the perspective. I'm really interested to see where the story goes from here and continue the series. I think there are 3 books, if I'm not mistaken, so I don't know when I'll get to them, hopefully soon. And then I read Summer of '69 by Ellen Hildebrand. This was my first ever Ellen Hildebrand book. Hi. Hi. Can I help you? This was my first ever Ellen Hildebrand book, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars, so it definitely wasn't my favorite book out there, but it was still really entertaining. And it follows a family during the summer of '69, obviously, but it follows like the mom and then the 3 sisters. There also is a brother, but he was overseas in the Vietnam War, so you didn't really get much of his perspective. But you do get the 3 sisters and the mom's perspective, and they all were living very different lives. It was really interesting to see how they just went about life. That's really all this was. There wasn't any crazy things that happened in it, but I did really enjoy getting to see the different dynamics between the 3 sisters and how each sister was different from each other. And I liked that you got the perspective of all 4 characters, and it wasn't just following the family from one point of view. You get all the point of views, and they range very drastically. One's like a 14-year-old girl, one is a girl who's about to give birth to twins, and then another is like a college student who is kind of trying to figure out who she is. So I would highly recommend. I do want to read more Ellen Hildebrand because I feel like she's a summer author and we're now going into fall, so the summery books just aren't on my radar anymore. And then I read My Sister the Serial Killer. This was a book club pick for my family book club, and I did not really enjoy this one very much. I ended up giving it 2 stars. It just wasn't my cup of tea. I'm not the biggest thriller girly. I do like to read one every now and again, but I'm just not that big into them, and this one was just really hard for me to follow. I didn't connect to any of the characters at all, and it's also a really short book. I listened to the audio and it was literally only like 4 hours long, so it is a really short, quick read, but I just didn't connect to any of the characters. I had trouble following everything, so that one was a 2-star for me. And then I read Brissinger. This is the 3rd book in the Aragon series. I am really enjoying this series, and I definitely think that this one has been my favorite so far out of the series. I just felt like it was pretty much from the very beginning quick paced, and there was a point in this book where I was listening to the audiobook, and there was a point in this book where I was sitting there doing a puzzle and my jaw dropped. And I sat there just staring off into space like this for a second. Just staring off, jaw on the floor, because I figured something out about Aragon and his family that I completely went straight over my head. Did not think it would be that at all. So that was kind of fun that I didn't see this big reveal coming, but I am really excited to finish the series because I only have one more book in the original Aragon series, so I'm very excited to get to that one at some point. Again, I don't know when that will be, but they're just continuing following Aragon as he's preparing for this big giant war that is going to be happening between the humans and the elves and just all the different people. I also really liked in this one that there was a couple chapters from Saphira's point of view, which if you don't know this series, Saphira is the name of Aragon's dragon. And there were actually a couple chapters from her point of view, and I really loved those chapters. I thought, what a unique, fun thing, because you don't really get the point of view of the dragons in many books with dragons, and I really enjoyed getting to just see into her mind and read her thoughts. It was just really fun and different, and not a lot of books do that with animal characters, so definitely those were my favorite chapters. And there was only a couple of them, but they were my favorite. Whenever it got to one that was her point of view, I got really excited. So, and you also get to see some more of his cousin, which you briefly saw some things of from previous books, but I feel like you really got to learn more about him in this book as well. And then I read One Golden Summer. I really enjoyed this one. I actually listened to the audiobook of this, and then when I was at a bookstore they had it and I had to buy a copy because I had just finished it the day or two before I was at this bookstore, and I gave this 4.5 stars. So I definitely really enjoyed it and wanted to own a physical copy of it. So since they had it at this bookstore, I just picked it up. I think I enjoyed this one more than I liked Every Summer After. The story of this one was more entertaining to me than Every Summer After. I did really enjoy Every Summer After as well. I think this might be my favorite by her. It's either between this or This Summer Will Be Different, but I think this one is my favorite that I've read from her so far, and it's my 3rd book that I've read by Carly Fortune. But this one follows Charlie and Alice, and Alice, when she was younger, spent one summer at this lake, and when she was there, she took this one picture of these two boys and a girl on a boat, and literally it's this boat right here, but she took a picture of them and she didn't know who they were, but that picture kind of changed her trajectory of life and pushed her towards being a photographer, and now she's like this really big photographer. And she comes back to this lake to take care of her grandma who just had surgery and take some time off of working, and she kind of like is rediscovering who she is as a photographer, while also a friendship is sparking between her and Charlie that turns into something a little bit more than being friends. But I thought it was really cute, and Charlie is one of the boys from that picture that she took. She doesn't realize that until a little bit into it. I really enjoyed it, and Charlie is the brother of the mailman character from Every Summer After. So definitely would recommend reading Every Summer After before reading this one, because you get to see a little bit of Charlie in that book, but also you kind of just like get to know the whole dynamic of everyone that you see glimpses of in this one. Definitely would recommend reading Every Summer After first, but this one is my favorite by her. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. And then I read Accomplice to the Villain. I gave this one 4.5 stars as well. I love this series. This series is so fun. I find myself literally laughing out loud every time I read these books. This was my first time physically reading it. I have listened to the other two, and the audiobooks are really, really good. So if you are someone that likes audiobooks, would highly recommend these books as audiobooks. If you don't know what these books are, it follows Evie, who in the first one, she stumbles upon the mailman character who so happens to be this town's villain, and he decides to hire her as his assistant, and you discover, and while she's working with him, you discover that there is someone who is trying to sabotage the villain, and then she gets promoted to be his apprentice and is kind of learning a little bit more about being a villain, but also still trying to figure out who is the person responsible for trying to sabotage them. And then now she is the accomplice to the villain, so she is definitely working her way up, getting those promotions. I really enjoy these books. They're so funny, witty, banter heavy, and they're so cozy. There's like, even when the things are happening that are like life or death situations, there's comedy thrown into it, so there's like a comedic relief to it, to where the life or death situations don't feel as heavy as they would in other fantasy books. And then I read The Girl I Was by Geneva Rose. Now I will say, I read this for one of my book clubs that I'm a part of, and I will say that my Libby hold did not come available with the new release of this book, because if you don't know, Geneva Rose published this book back in like 2020, 2021, something like that, but she self-published it, and now that she's with a publisher, she added more things to it and tweaked it a bit and then republished it under this publishing company. And I did not get to read the new version of it. I read the original, older, self-published version of it, just because that's what my library app had available, and my hold on the new one was not going to be ready in time for my book club discussion. So I think that played a part into my rating of it, but I ended up giving it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. It was a fun, lighthearted, very nostalgic vibes, because I grew up in the 2000s, and so it just felt very like I knew everything that they were talking about and could like visualize all of it, and so that part of it was really nostalgic and fun. But just the overall story, it was just hard for me to connect to our main character. If you don't know what this book is about, Our main character is her life is kind of falling apart, and she wakes up one day back in the 2000s at her college town that she went to college at, and her college self is also alive at this time. So college self and current self team up together to try to get current self back into present day time. It was interesting. I definitely think Geneva Rose does a better job with her mystery thrillers, but I still enjoyed it, and I probably would have enjoyed it more if I read the new version of it, not the self-published version she released a couple years ago. And then I read Cloud Cuckoo Land. I gave this one 5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. My best friend Maddie, this is one of her favorite books that she read in 2024, and she's been trying to get me to read it ever since. And Maddie, I understand why you wanted me to read this, because it was so good. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. At first it was a little hard for me to understand how the stories all connected, because you're following 3 separate stories within this book. They're all connected by this one book or story that's told during all these 3 different time periods. So the first story takes place in Constantinople in the 15th century, and you follow a young girl who kind of is obsessed with learning and reading, which is not common in this time period. And she finds a book with a story that is like a long lost story. And then you fast forward 500 years, we are now in the second story, which follows 2 different characters. And this story is kind of almost split into 2, because you're following both of these characters as they're growing up and getting to the point where they are intersected in the second half of this second story that you follow, where one of these 2 characters is working in a library. Oh, I did not mean to flip you off. Is working in a library and working with a group of like 5th graders to put on a play of a long lost story, if you're seeing the connection here. And the second character is at this library and kind of becomes a little bit of a hostage situation. And then the third story takes place on an interstellar ship, and there is another young girl who is on this ship, and this virus breaks out on the ship, but her dad would always tell her this story, and she goes on a mission to try to find the origins of this story. And if you couldn't tell, the story the girl finds in Constantinople, the story that is being turned into a play, and the story that this girl was told from a young age on this intergalactic spaceship is the same story. So that's kind of how they're all connected through this one Greek story. But I thought it was really cool getting to see how this story impacted 3 separate people in 3 completely different time periods. Chef's Kiss, so good. I definitely think that Anthony Doerr is a fantastic author, because I also really enjoyed All the Light We Cannot See, which is by him as well. So now I'm like, I need to see what other books he's written. And then the last book that I read this month was These Memories Do Not Belong to Us. I got an ARC of this one from NetGalley, which I believe it is now available to purchase, but I honestly was kind of confused while reading this one. I ended up giving it 2.5 stars because I just could not really follow what was going on. I was confused. It takes place in the future in this like sci-fi world where you get like your memory bank. Like people live through memory banks, and you can relive memories of yourself or other people. And it basically, the main character's mom has passed away and has left his inheritance is all of her memories from her memory bank. and some of them are very controversial and could cause him to be like arrested or killed or something, but he decides to share those memories with the world before the government comes to him because of these memories that he was inherited. Because I guess when someone passes away, their memories all get put into a system for reviewment or something. I don't know. Like I said, I was confused the whole time. I just didn't understand. I think it just was too much over my head. So you're like living through this person's memories, but then I felt like the memories just were all over the place. They didn't make sense. They weren't connected at all. I did not enjoy the book. So I gave it 2.5. Honestly, thinking back on it, I probably would lower it to a 2. Yeah, I don't know what else to tell you about it. That is my thoughts. So with that, those are all 9 books that I read in August. Here's my little stack. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!